Good. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the special regional council meeting of March the 16th. So we'll call to order. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this meeting is being held in the traditional territory of our friends, our neighbors, and our Treaty 8 partners of the Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize our treaty and we recognize the rights provided in that treaty. We also celebrate the contributions of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that this afternoon's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Council, do you have any additions to today's special meeting? No. Staff?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Going, second by Councillor Enoch. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so that brings us to 2026 government transfer applications greater than 15,000 for discussion. So I will turn it over to staff and we'll see how we'll go through this meeting.
I can just jump in before I hand it over to Shane. Just for council, I mean, obviously this is our first time going through the process this way with the new policy. Like anything new, sometimes it's not without its wrinkles and some challenges, and you look back in the rearview mirror and realize something could have been different, or requests come in a little bit different on our end from an organization perspective. So, you know, the intent of today is to have that dialogue and discussion with council, walk through the various applications. If more information is required or whatnot, obviously we can go back. You know, the council shouldn't feel pressured to have to make a decision on everything today if there's still information that's outstanding or detail or information that needs to be brought back again for council. And with that, I'll hand it over to Miss Shane. We got Tony there also. Is there any questions from a financial perspective? And we'll and again, even how we go through the information is new.
That's right.
So I'll hand it over and then we'll navigate through it today.
Great. Good day, Mayor and Council. We're very excited to be here with you today to review this government transfers program information. You'll have received the admin report as well as the summary report, which covers all of the information regarding the request for over $15,000. As Scott mentioned, this is a evolution of the previous grant and aid project, something that I've been working on since I started with the municipality in January. I did add a document to you this morning outlining the budgets for the organization. So apologies that wasn't available last week, but we just received the final ones this morning. And yeah, we're very excited to have you review these, discuss them, and from a staff perspective, really looking forward to your feedback on the program itself and ways that we can kind of improve and streamline it going forward. Thank you.
Okay, so how do we wish to proceed? Do we want to look at these one at a time? Do we want to look at the entire policy? How do we want to proceed? Staff, you got an idea?
Oh, I see.
Could I just, are we hoping to make decisions today or are we presenting information? I asked that question because that will impact how I wish to proceed.
From a budget process perspective, obviously, the earlier that decisions can be made in terms of, I'll say the outcomes for the individual requests or applications, the better it is to have an understanding, better position here from a budget perspective in terms of that line item on the budgets, specific to the government transfer component. The question is, and I'll throw this back in the council's court, is what are you comfortable with doing today? I mean, we could go through each one individually and council can have a discussion about them. Because being a new process, some of the things we talked about as part of the budgetary process was having a budget established overall that helps look after the program. And this year being the first year of having a mechanism where new organizations, I'll say not necessarily new organizations, but organizations that haven't typically requested funds in the past would request funds. And we see that this year. because that one of the intents of the program was to have a mechanism there. We don't necessarily have we don't have a starting point per se in terms of what that number would be. So when council during the policy development talked about what value should we look at? Is it a percentage of the operations budget? What is that percentage? It was discussed at the time. Well, get an idea in terms of what the landscape looks like
Mhm.
to have an idea what that is, understanding that, you know, if it could change next year if more come to the table, more groups per se. So again, it's up to council, I guess, collectively with us as a group to kind of navigate through how you would want to do that. I mean, it would be great if we can start getting some decisions today, understanding that there's some, most likely some in here that requests that council's going to request more information or more detail on or clarification. So I guess it's what's from a flavor perspective, would you like to go through them individually and discuss them? Is that something you'd like to do? You want to
So from my perspective, there was some goals that we hope to achieve by putting the new policy in place. One of them was to try to streamline the review process from past years to give us a better understanding what the information was there, and so we didn't necessarily have to get into a lot of the detail of all of the different organizations' budgets and operations. And for me, that I got some of that here, but clearly we're not to where I'd hoped that we would be. And I think there is a need, and I guess that could be because there's folks who have been going through this process or organizations that have been going through this process for many years. And there's others because we opened up who have just sort of applied and weren't sure maybe whether they should be applying or shouldn't be, or didn't know what all the information. And so we worked together with them and staff. But in reviewing the applications individually, I see that there's still questions that I have with some of the applications. So we didn't quite get there. But I think we got to some of them. You know, one was, again, trying to streamline the information so it was easier to look at. Two was trying to get consistency between the applications so that we knew what we were looking at. And I think we got that. Although in a couple of cases it wasn't presented very well. Fair? It wasn't presented very well, and where it wasn't presented very well, they're new applicants, and so you would expect that they're still trying to figure out how to do it. If I could say the Legacy 3, I thought the Legacy 3's information was presented easily. It was easy for me to look at it, and there might be questions about it that, you know, inside there, but generally I understood what they were looking for and why. So, and then I think we were looking for, is clarity the right word? We were looking for the accountability, I guess is probably the word, you know, that we were, you know, with respect to the overall process. We were looking for accountability, better accountability from organizations that or more clear accountability from organizations that were receiving monies from us at different levels of accountability based on different levels of, and I think we have achieved that. We're yet to see that in operation yet because we need to see some of these agreements that come out this year. So I think we did, but we didn't get far enough along, in my view, where we can look at them all as a whole. I think we need to look at them individually again, and I, you know, there's still some council members have questions about the individual applications, and so I think because we've got people sitting around this table who have, you know, direct pecuniary interests in this, it would be best if we looked at each of these individually so that they have a chance to excuse themselves. So I guess that's where I'm at. We're getting there, but no, I don't think anybody expected us to get all the way in the first crack at this. So that's my thoughts generally about how I saw this year going so far. And I think we're going to have to go through them individually, and maybe we can make some decisions today. Maybe we'll need more information about others. And there will be some that maybe don't fit. And we can make decisions about that as well, I suppose, which then gives us a bit of an understanding what the budget number will look like. And I think our open house is set for the March the
March 31st.
31st. So there's opportunity, depending on how many wash out that we need more information from. We might have to just work with those individual groups. Because we've already made decisions on the ones that we've got passed. So that's
Yeah.
my thoughts. So have you got some thoughts on the whole process overall? Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So yeah, and I think the key piece you recognize too today is that council, as you know, if you're, for lack of better words, approving something, it's not approving the budget, it's approving the presentation that's supporting a budget number to be brought forward for council as part of the open house. So it's not the approval of the program or the request per se. It's acknowledging or approving the fact that that number can be part of a bigger number from a budget perspective that council would bring forward we bring forward as part of the budget package of the overall budget. Because when we look at the draft budget that was presented to council, that number was $1 million. When you look at the numbers that after we've taken a good look at the applications that's come through, and a total of what those were without, basically when we just add that total up, including, I'll call it potential costs that could be incurred throughout the year for other applicants within the program, other intakes, I'll call it. And there's also some funds that we have put in there to help look after or the need or the request from an audit financial component, because that's going to be some cost for some of these organizations. That number now is about $1.1 million, but that's if everything, and again, from an approval perspective, it's more on approving the process of saying this is what we would present to the public in terms of a dollar amount, not necessarily giving a commitment to a specific group that they're going to receive that funding.
Well, we're making the decision that their number is going forward to the budget.
Numbers going forward for the budget for future deliberation. Exactly. Yes.
If we're ready to do that.
Yes.
If we're not, we're looking for more information.
Exactly.
And we'll direct staff to work with that organization to get that information to us.
And it's a fair statement around the legacy groups that have presented the information. Of course, they've been doing it every year. So that's the information that they provided. We take a look at that. And then there were some that we've had to go back. Shane has been working diligently with various organizations, providing feedback and different information. Some have been incomplete in terms of some of the information that's been that we've received. So she's working with those groups to discuss what a potential later intake would be, to sort through some of that stuff. So all things that can be discussed today too, in terms of further information required for council to be able to make an informed decision.
Please.
So for today, I have no problem in approving a general amount of money that could be included in the budget and presented at the open house. On the understanding, because we did make the commitment that if there is an amount that we put in the budget that is not spent in that year, that anything left over rolls over into a reserve account. So there within lies my discomfort today. So to just confirm, I've got no problem in approving a number with the understanding that this is the first year we're doing this. And so if we are underspent, that amount that we underspend is not rolled over for this year only into a reserve account. I just feel that I didn't have enough time to go through all of the information. We just got the budgets because it's all new. We didn't ask for them, so nobody did nothing wrong. It just, yeah. And so that's how I'm feeling. And in terms of going through individually, if I may, is I don't want to put any one organization on the spot because I don't understand something. So in past years, the information came in, and then because financial things are not my strong suit, then I would go to Tony or Tammy or somebody and say, okay, what is this actually meaning? I don't necessarily want to do that today and calling out any one organization because of my ignorance. So that's how I'm feeling.
Okay. If you have a question about a financial, then others might have a question about the financial as well. And so I don't think you're singling out, I think if you're singling out anything, you're singling them out just for more, the request for more information from them. And then you can go potentially and get, and if you want more detailed information, you can go to staff to do that. But asking the question today, I'm trying to understand why that could be a problem for you.
Because it's highlighting my ignorance of somebody else's financial statement or like what has been presented, right? It's not necessarily a question about what the organization is presenting or isn't presenting. It's me not necessarily understanding how it's being presented. And does this figure over here tie into this figure over here? Like, you know, I don't know. I just feel like I prefer to ask those types of questions that are specific to my understanding in a more private setting. And that, like you all know, I have no problem in asking a question in public once I have a full understanding of the situation. But I guess today I'm just not feeling comfortable because I don't feel like I have a full understanding to go through individually. But the big figure, I'm good.
Oh, I thought I heard your microphone come on. Okay.
If I may,
Yeah, please.
I'd like to address Deputy Mayor Gerwing's second part of her comment. We are ready to come forward with the establishment of a reserve account for the government transfer program, which will outline how the unallocated and or unspent funds in the program are set aside in a reserve account. So we were bringing that forward previously, but the policy hadn't been approved at that point. So we are ready to bring that forward when council would like.
Right. But the amount that goes into that is still yet to be determined at a couple of different levels. One is at the budget level, trying to determine what the actual budget number is. And then there's further intakes, which may not be used, but that's money that we've put aside for that. And so that money, if it doesn't get used in further intakes, will go into that reserve account that you're talking about. But establishing that first number is still up in the air because we haven't approved is not the word. We haven't forwarded the individual application amounts to the budget, the overall budget. We've just got a placeholder there.
Yeah,
And if I understand, it's the placeholder, you're concerned about approving a placeholder that's not very accurate yet.
Nope,
No.
if I may. So given the information that we have been provided to date, and given the length of time that we have been able to review it, I think we have a general sense about how much we would be willing to set aside this year. But when you look at the cost summary for government transfers, over $15,000, what was presented to us are 3 organizations that are ineligible.
Right.
So it didn't make sense to me to put aside this amount of money when we know these 3 are ineligible, and I don't think we should take it into account. But if we did, and it's underspent, then this time only, I don't want to see that rolled over into a reserve.
Right.
I want to see that go back into general revenue.
But if we have the discussion about whether they're eligible or not, if it's determined by council that they're not eligible and there's no, they're not eligible because they don't fit the policy, rather than we don't have enough information to make a decision on them yet.
But that was done at the staff level.
Right. But
It's
so that's
already, they are already determined as ineligible. But
right.
they're still presented on the sheet.
Right. So we can confirm, ultimately it's council's decision. So even if it's ineligible, there still can be a discussion about whether we agree with that determination or not.
Well, then what's the point of the policy?
Well, we've got to get through it sooner or later.
if-
Because
Okay, so like we're getting into the weeds, and if you want to get into
That's
the
what we're
weeds,
here
we can
for.
get into the weeds, but my understanding is that we would set up this policy, the applications would come in, staff would work with the different organizations that are submitting the applications. And if the application does not meet the policy, staff at that level can deem that it is ineligible. Any application that's submitted, it's deemed eligible, it's presented to council, and council makes that decision. So if I have misunderstood the policy, then please correct me.
yes, please.
Can I get some clarification, please? Deputy Mayor, are you saying that 3 of the applications in front of us today are ineligible?
Correct.
Oh. Is it indicated anywhere that they're not eligible? I see a complete under the status, but it didn't pop out to me that they weren't eligible for funding.
Go ahead. That,
Yeah, so the two organizations that were ineligible, and I appreciate that this could have been communicated more clearly in the summary document, but in the individual checklist of the organizations, there is information for those two that explain a bit about why we've deemed them ineligible.
And one was incomplete.
Yes.
and one's incomplete.
And-
But it could become complete, right?
And so I guess some clarification for us, because I'll speak personally, that I wouldn't have assumed that because we receive an application at one point in the year that is ineligible, that they wouldn't be permitted to adjust their application and submit at a later intake.
Right.
And I would have assumed it was our responsibility as staff to work with those applicants as best we can so that they submit an application that is most competitive or meets the criteria if it's possible. So while some of
That's
them
for the
have been
first-
deemed ineligible at this intake, it's honestly because there hasn't been enough capacity to undertake all of those negotiations with all 12 applicants to get them to a point where their application could be right for this intake. So the conversations with those that aren't meeting the criteria today are that we will continue to work with you for the next intake. We didn't want to assume that they are never going to be eligible. It's the application we see today and the information they've been able to provide today with this application doesn't meet the criteria. But that's not to say that they can't get there for the next intake.
Especially in the first year,
Correct, yes, because we know
Especially
this is
'cause-
new for everybody.
because there's new ones there
Yeah.
that really haven't fulfilled the information void or the requirements. Maybe that's even better. They haven't filled the information requirements this year. Because maybe they, haven't been keeping the information that they need over the years. So if they need more information, I think we need to let them know that they need more information. So that number, if they're ineligible, they could still become eligible later.
I'm not arguing that,
Oh.
which is my discomfort today, is if we take this figure and say, okay, so we have like a rough understanding, which is what we were hoping to get, and it's like $1.2 million, and we approve that to go into the budget, I have no problem with that. But what I'm saying for this first year is, could we just suspend the part of the reserve fund that says any unspent funds for this year is not going into a reserve fund, because it's the first year, we're just getting our feet wet. Without more time to delve into some of this information, I'm just uncomfortable committing to funds today that are going into a reserve fund at this point in time. I got no problem in voting on a general amount.
So there's a point of clarity. So the reserve account is outlined in the policy component. That was a discussion that occurred. If funds and council can absolutely provide that guidance or direction during this process right now, but the reality is that particular decision would be next year's council. because the unused funds, now that direction of, because if you create a, if you agree on a budget, we'll say it's $1 million, just for hypothetical sake. And you go through the year and you spend 1.1, you've exhausted the whole thing based on going through the process. If you spend $1 million, there's $100,000 left over. That information gets brought forward as a carry forward into the next budget process. And then that budget process is when that discussion would be in terms of where do you want those funds utilized, just like we do today, because it could be either go into general surplus, they can go into the reserve account. Because you're budgeting X amount this year to tax that amount, and you're providing direction in terms of where you would like it to go, but you won't know what that number is and what those funds would be until the next budget cycle. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense, but it's a year down the road.
Yes,
And it
exactly.
doesn't help.
It doesn't
But I
help.
just
That's the point. That's
understood
my
that
point.
it automatically goes into a reserve
That's the
fund.
that's the policy.
Part of the policies.
Yep.
All I'm asking for today is this year, as we're getting our feet wet, is let's suspend that for this year or present it to the next council. They might decide to put it in a reserve fund or they might not. I just am uncomfortable right now committing that without having more time to go through all the information. I'm sorry, Councillor Roper, please.
Well, it's a good discussion. I think when we levy taxes, we have a general purpose for those taxes. And I think the part that I'm uncomfortable with is levying taxes with the suggestion that the money we raise for this thing goes to something else. And general surplus is not what we're raising those taxes for. It's for the nonprofits, for the government transfers program. And I feel more assured that if it goes into a reserve account, it will be used for those purposes. If we put it into general surplus, we could use it for potentially anything. So I see a bit of a conflict with that, with raising those funds for a specific reason and using them for something else. That's my only hesitation with that. I think at the end of the day, it would be considered a surplus, either in on this pot or this pot. But that would be my concern, is that when we raise taxes, we do it for a reason. And I haven't seen any examples of that in the past. Like, let's say our fire resiliency committee, we fundraised $500,000 last year, and we didn't put that into general surplus. That continues to be used for that committee, correct?
Yes,
Yep.
but it didn't go in a reserve account. So reserve accounts have different rules, right? It just rolled over. So I would be good then if it would be rolling over. It's committing it to a reserve account is where and I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to be so picky, but that's where my discomfort is.
I would be 100% in favor of rolling it over to, say, offset next year's ask, as long as it's for that purpose. It's just, it would be hard for me to explain, we took this money, we told you we were going to spend it on this, but we actually spent it on this. That's the only reservation I have. But I think we're on the same page here, for sure.
So, well, I'm just trying to get to, are you concerned that we're overestimating, or we're being too conservative with the number that we have? Just because we're afraid we're not going to have enough for everybody this year, or is it?
My concern lies with, I haven't had enough time to go through the information at the depth that I like to go through it. I'm not making any judgments on anybody else. And I haven't had an opportunity to ask my question.
Right, but the audit, or probably the audit process, the budget process is, we've got a long way to go in it yet. We're just talking about having a number that we can put into the open house, right?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's what we're gonna do if there's any surplus that I just want to clarify.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can, when we get to the final number, or a closer number, we actually can get this a lot closer to what it will actually be.
Well, I don't know that we can, Mayor, because we have another intake in September.
But
So
we've set aside what we think that amount should
what
be.
we think, yeah, but we don't know for sure.
So that's the conservative approach that I was talking about. We might be too conservative then.
I just don't feel comfortable in that I know enough, that's all.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm Just at the risk of repeating myself.
Well, yeah, no, I think I understand you, but I'm thinking, I'm kind of thinking about policy a little bit now, year over year. Would we ever know that though? Like even in year two, would we get ourselves close enough that we'd then be comfortable about putting it into how much we were gonna put into the reserve or the rollover?
I think
Like-
we would. I think going through the process, we've already learned so much, right?
Yeah.
We've seen kind of what works. We've already identified a few missing pieces. For myself, I need more time. So we have a general idea of what the community today is looking for, right? So, and we're kind of making decisions on a 1 year basis, which is, I think, holds true with the way I'm thinking about the reserve fund. It's like, let's just go through this year. And then if there is extra, because that's the other question. So if there is extra, we could roll it over as opposed to putting it in a reserve fund. But what if we don't have enough? Do we have a plan for that? Are we pulling from somewhere else? Like, are we just going to say in September, sorry, we spent all the money?
But
What is like, we obviously thought at one point reserve account is where
Yeah.
the unspent funds should go. What would these funds, let's say if they start to accumulate, what would they be used for in general?
If I may. So I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So I'm just gonna try to get some clarity here, just so I'm clear, and then Tony can chime in whenever also. So for one, there is no reserve account established yet, right?
not
But it
established
is in
yet,
the
The
policy.
intent, but the
Yes.
intent in the
Yeah.
policy was done for that.
to establish.
But the intent of the reserve fund is exactly what you're talking about, was to be able to roll over those funds so that those funds could be utilized for the government transfer process in the future. So you can call it what you wish, but at the end of the day, it's the intent of and if I recall council's intent was because you try to nail down a figure at the budget during the budget process that would get you through the year, for lack of better words. But knowing that there was a potential that number could be higher, the budget amount could be higher than what was utilized, you wanted to ensure that if you taxed for that purpose, that those funds continued to be utilized for that purpose, and it went back into the program. They were utilized as part of the program.
But if I may, but my understanding is that we weren't going to do that to build up a reserve fund.
No,
No. It's like the reserve fund and the policy around a reserve fund and what the intent of it is clearly communicated when council passes a resolution, which hasn't even been done yet. So how you want that reserve fund to be managed and what the intent of it is would be part of that resolution to council, because it's not a statutory reserve fund. So you may do like what you wish to do with it in terms of you might put a maximum amount on it. You might say as a minimum amount. It's how you contribute to that is entirely up to council. That's based on council direction and your decision.
right,
what
but
you
the
want to
policy says that if there's a surplus from a particular year, that's where it would
do.
go.
Exactly.
So whether it's a reserve, I think what we're trying to say is that we don't want it rolled over into general revenue. It's rolled over into the particular fund. We're splitting hairs. right?
We are, but I think you get my general idea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's-
we can
it's-
call it
it's-
whatever.
It's an account. So
It's
we
an
we
account, but I
essentially
didn't wanna
we
see it
essentially
built
created an
up.
account that if there's funds in the intent in the discussion with council, if there was funds remaining, that they would be rolled into that account.
Right.
How that account is managed
We
in
would-
terms is also council direction, right? And the intent of it was to help potentially smooth out some ebb and flow. But if you tax for it, like to Councilor Roper's comment earlier, the intent of it was that if you tax for that particular purpose, and this is what the intent of it was, those funds stayed there. And then you have the ability to pull from them following year. You have to offset what you might budget for that year, that council time. There's different mechanisms you can do it. That hasn't technically been established yet.
Right.
But I know that the intent was this in the policy, but in order to establish that, Tony's gonna bring a report forward to say, here's what it is. And then it'll reflect or be aligned with what the intent of the policy was, right? So I think we're still all talking the same thing. I think we kind of get caught up in terms of what that reserve account would do or wouldn't do. And it's not like you're putting funds in and it's the process is not the same as planning for future years like you would with the renewal fund per se.
Right.
The intent was to be able to utilize any unused funds to make sure they didn't go into general surplus.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like an equipment reserve where you're actually building it up in order to buy
Exactly.
something later
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
It's a,
And-
it's a holding account so that you can flatten out some of those years where you really don't think you have enough to fund everybody, or you get somebody come in who's never applied before, and all of a sudden it puts this year's number up a whole bunch. Well, maybe we can pull in a little bit from there to smooth that out.
Yeah, we do a similar thing, say, with our training program, right? With our training program, we will carry forward funds from the previous year to help offset the cost for the next year, right? But again, that's just because we've taxed for training. Training might not go ahead. We still want to train and we continue to, but we're not building this fund where it continues to grow like the equipment fund or water and
Okay.
sewer. The intent of it, council wanted to make sure, based on the development of the original policies, that you had the ability to take those funds if they were unused and put them aside, call it whatever account you want to call it,
And
and
use it for
utilize
that.
them the next year, or utilize it as part of your decision making so that they didn't just go into general surplus and you're retaxing again for similar funds, right?
Right.
That was the intent. And I think the hope is that we get to a point where you can establish a budget that you think will get you, based on where your requests are, to your point, Councillor Gerwing, where you'll get to a point where that budget will get you through the year and have funds enough to look after council's decisions in terms of throughout the year. But if it's unutilized, then those funds will, for lack of better words, carry forward or roll over back for into the next budget season, right?
I think we're in the same page.
I do. I think you're all on the same page in the reserve.
We're agreeing violently.
I think though that the least worry is an undersubscribed fund.
Yeah.
Like it's oversubscription that I'm more worried about in the whole thing. Like this is where, to your point, that you're always guessing at the budget stage what the whole year is going to look like. If you have an open application process, you don't know what applications are coming, and you have this historical anecdotal, not just anecdotal, but a historical record of any fund that you put in a budget and you've got a solid number. Notice that the intakes get cut off in every fund we know of in government, because you run out of money, because once there's money to apply for it, someone will figure out how to apply for it. So the oversubscription, I think, is actually, like, I think that when we're establishing a budget number, we should anticipate what we think is there, but not expect really there to be a surplus problem, a reserve fund problem, because that kind of takes care of itself. Someone will find a way to apply for the rest of that fund in another uptake in the year. I really don't think the money is going to sit there if we make it available to apply for.
Mm. Yeah, well, yeah, it's there. It still has to meet all the requirements of the policy, but yeah, but you're right. They'll figure out a way to go there. Well, okay, so then are we at a place where we can agree to an overall number? Are we in a place that we can agree that this year it won't all roll over? That it won't go to reserve?
Yeah, okay, it will roll.
It will roll over, but it won't go to reserve.
Okay.
Well, we have to,
We'll have to keep this conversation in mind when the reserve policy
Right.
comes
comes forward to
before
it.
us, right? I think it's on the record now what the wishes are, and then when the reserve policy comes forward, I will continue to make my wishes known, and then
Right.
council can make the decision as they will.
Right. So then, are we in a place where we can, is there any low hanging fruit with respect to these applications that we can deal with today that we all agree on and we have consensus on, so that when we get more information, and I think I think staff has done their best to bring the information that some of us thought were lacking, like budgets and that sort of thing. Are we in a position to be able to say that for some of these, we're prepared to move forward, then put another meeting later on sometime to talk about the ones that we had questions about?
If I may.
Yes.
So I'm uncomfortable going to the open house without knowing what we've approved, because I think that that's what the community is looking for. Like, they want to know if the grant to organization X was approved or Y, and they will act accordingly,
Right.
right?
So I'm agreeing with you there. That becomes our deadline for finishing this.
Yes.
This process is somewhere before March 31st.
Yes.
So in the next 20 minutes, are there any that we can agree that we don't need any more information on? We can agree that they go, that the request, we're prepared to put the request forward into the budget number. Go ahead.
I think most of the questions I would have for even the individual applications would be coming from either them or the community once they have a good idea of the funds that we're presenting to them and their priorities. So, I mean, my decisions are always based on the community and what they want. So, and we're not going to know that until we go to the budget process, the open house process, and gather some of that feedback.
Oh.
Confirm what you're saying, sorry.
Can I maybe just, because one of the cards that gets put up, if I recall, one of the cards we put up for people to look at is all the different grants to community groups. So did we do that in the past? So library was listed, everybody was listed. We need to get to there, right? So that so everybody knows that that's what we're putting, those are the numbers that we're putting in there. So I'm trying to get to that, or a piece of that today, so that any meetings we have between now and then are focused on the few that we have question. I don't want to say significant questions about. So, because I I know others might have questions about some of them, but you know, I'm just wondering, does everybody have questions about all 12?
Well, some of them are currently ineligible, but from what I understand of the conversation, there's 2 that are ineligible today, but we're gonna placehold that just in case they meet eligibility.
Mhm.
And then there's one that's incomplete. And I think that there's another one maybe that's in the process that isn't on this sheet. So I don't know that we can look at it like as the whole 9 or however many there are. So if you're headed to going through this individually and then make a decision, if I have a question, then I will be voting no until such time as I have a chance to present my question. But I'm one vote of 6. So it's just me, right? Like,
Yeah, that's why I'm looking for the low hanging fruit. I'm just looking to see if there are any that we don't have, that as collectively as a group, we don't have any questions on, that we're prepared to put them forward.
And what I'm saying is that I might have more questions based on community feedback from the proposed number, because these aren't approved, right? This is just a proposal to the community, and they're really not our numbers. They're really coming from these groups.
Right.
So, you know, whatever questions I have right now could be influenced by what the community says to that overall number, and that could shrink, or it might go bigger. It might stay the same. I'm not too sure, but I don't have all the questions ready at this point until the community has a good idea of what's being proposed. Now, we could whittle this down. We could get into the weeds and propose a different number than what's been presented to us. I guess we could do that. But what I'm really looking for is feedback from the community to ascertain which questions I would have.
So how do we know what to present to the community? What do you want to present to just the applications?
I think
Or the individual
I think we have it right here, unless we wanted to whittle this down to a specific pot. My concern with that is, you know, you run into the problem of pitting one nonprofit against the other, even if it's a perceived, you know, one got more funding than this one did. And then all of a sudden they might think that's the perception is, well, we got less because they got more. I'd rather go with the number that's in front of us today, And then have that more fulsome discussion after the community gets an opportunity to see those numbers, what the community, what the organizations are looking for. And they might have questions for the organizations as well. So really feel like we're kind of at the beginning of this. I mean, we're just getting these numbers now.
So sorry,
yep, go
you
ahead.
wouldn't list the individual numbers?
I would
You
present them
will.
the same as we have them right here, so that everyone knows which organization is what every organization is asking for. And then, once we get that information, then I think, we would all probably have questions that we're not even considering right now. So, I mean, we're not making decisions on the individual groups, as I understand it. We're making a decision with an overall number for the program. And we don't know if all of these or none of these will be approved at the end of the day. But what we're looking for is just one number for the entire program. So.
And that breakdown would then have to include what we're putting aside for the next intake and.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We've
And what
already
about-
made all that public. It's in this document right now.
Yeah. But it hasn't been presented to the open house yet, where people could have the opportunity to speak on it. And we haven't decided whether or not what staff have deemed ineligible at this moment, whether that goes into that number. Well, but it could be presented on this at the same way as it's presented here, ineligible and the amount. Right. And then there's questions about why are they ineligible, and we have those answers. Right. And staff continue to keep working with them. So there becomes a couple of different lists. One where the applications are complete. So essentially this report is going on a card for the open house. But what does that do to the budget process?
Sorry, could I
Oh,
just ask a question?
Sure, about that.
So just about that. So would we need permission from the groups that have been deemed ineligible and incomplete to publicize that at an open house? Because it's my understanding that 2 of them have received emails to say that they are ineligible.
Yeah, just to confirm, so the 2 organizations that staff has deemed ineligible, they have been contacted and informed of that, and I'm meeting with them this week. And the applications that were incomplete, Tony has been working with them for several months, and they were well aware that their applications were complete and understood that.
But I guess where I'm headed, if we're headed towards taking this report and putting it on an
infographic. Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Like that organization might not want their name out there and the amount and the status of being ineligible. Is just I understand that today's is public meeting and that this report is public, but I see a difference in that as opposed to putting something up on a big info.
I don't.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
fair enough.
I'm just understanding what
yeah.
Deputy Mayor is trying to convey for sure. Yep.
So then what does that do to the
The budget process?
thank you. to the budget
You
process?
already said it once. I know this is
Yeah,
not discussion.
yeah.
so
Yeah,
Not to
my
finish.
brain went over there and
It's
yeah.
okay. So I think, it's good conversation. And again, this is one of the reasons why we wanted to have this dialogue also today, because it's a new process and
Yeah.
making sure because as staff, so first off, when we talk deemed ineligibility, it's based on the policy that
policy,
staff
yeah.
and the 2 that are ineligible are linked to the ask in relation to other funds, so that because one of the policy statements that council made was that they didn't want to fund a program fully. They
Right.
wanted to ensure that there was other funds that were brought in
Yeah.
based on the level and stuff. In terms of the budget process, I think it's good when we look at what the intent of the open house is typically, right? Because you've gone through all of the individual items in the budget, if it's operations, capital, individually or independently within reason, to determine if you're in support of presenting a budget as part of the open house. What we haven't done, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, is we haven't actually, because typically what we get is that once we get to the end, we usually get a resolution to council, say council's in support of the document as is to present to the public in terms of what that number is so that at the open house, they can have that conversation with the public to say this is, to get the feedback, because then we bring that feedback back to the group, right? But you're not making the actual determination from deliberation perspective until the feedback's been received. And then we have that discussion as part of the, I'll call it the final budget meetings for council to deliberate and make and to determine if they want to pass resolution on the budget itself. So I guess the difference that will happen if those discussions for this purpose occur is that if you remember the past 2 years when we adjusted or pivot in terms of how the budget process was done, typically unless there was changes to the budget once we got to those final budget meetings, a lot of those discussions happen at the start. It doesn't mean that you can't have further discussions when you get there. So that's the only difference today. If council's fine presenting a budget with a number on there, like the number that's been presented we'll call it as a placeholder to see how the public, how they receive that information and get the feedback, that's perfectly fine. I'll look to Tony to see if she has any concerns of the group, but I mean, that's because at least then we have what should take the sum of all parts. We have a net tax levy. We outline how that net tax levy has come to be. And when we get people show up at the open house or provide feedback and the other mechanisms, that's the number that council is seeing if it passes, I guess, the test with the public, right? So
Yeah, so what I see on an infographic that lays out all the different parts of the budget is when it comes to grants to community, or sorry, I'm all confused about what we're calling it.
the government transfer.
Government
process?
transfers, thank you. There's a number with an asterisk beside it.
Yes.
And then that asterisk is pointing to another infographic, which lays out this report.
Sure.
Right? And what's met eligibility list, what hasn't met eligibility list, what's proposed for future intakes, which can include the ones that didn't make it, right? Because they're still potentially eligible for the next intake. And that would explain to the people, and there might be some questions about, well, why weren't they in it? But the budget says why they weren't, or not the budget, sorry, the policy will say why they weren't eligible at the time. But we're still holding them because we're working with them to see if they can become eligible. Some will just not be eligible based on the project and the application that they put in. It's just pure and simple, not applicable. So it would have to be something different. But we can make those determinations then. So the only thing, so then we're signing off on, and whether we do this or we don't, what we'd be signing off on is that number with an asterisk. That's the only piece left now, right? For a draft budget.
Yeah.
Is that required? Is it required that we say that the council says this is the draft budget? Is that, I mean, it has been, it's been done in the past. What's the fear if we don't do that? If we don't say that this is council's draft?
It's just the certainty of knowing what version of the budget we're taking to public consultation. So if council's prepared to resolve today that would like to include the amount in the report in the draft budget for public consultation, which is what I think I'm hearing, then we're in good shape to publish that and create all the materials and things from that point. Okay, so really it's just the iteration. The resolution says this is the iteration that we're taking to the
Yes,
essentially.
yeah, because that's the document that you want to bring forward for public feedback. So that when it comes time to deliberate on that final budget, you've received the feedback on whatever items the public may wish to provide feedback on, and you make that determination after.
Okay, so are we just?
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So the number that we're looking at is 1,106,803, and that makes 911,305. For operating, capital is 38,000. Operating request under 5,000 is 4,698. Incomplete applications estimate 25,000. Estimate for 2026 intake Under 5,000 is 25,000. Estimate for 2026 intakes between 5,000 and 15,000 is 30,000. Estimated fee waivers to match 2025 is 22,800. And estimate to assist groups to meet consistent financial reports is $50,000, making up 1,106,803. Yes, that's what we're talking about. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So that number would be the number that goes in the line with an asterisk and then
Draft.
in the draft budget and an infographic to explain all of that. The 900,000 would be broken down and the rest would have an explanation as well. Yeah.
And
So then we've got to the open house. We've got a number. We've presented it to the public. When do we approve these?
Well, that's the other question.
Right, that's the next step, is to
so-
actually approve them individually.
So it could be part of the budget process. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it per se, because it could really start to slow down. So I mean, again, for discussion, the hope or the thought would be is that we still have some information that we're requesting. Oceana's got some stuff and that's still in the queue that she's waiting for. The hope is that council would have that dialogue and discussion, so at least we can sort through, for lack of better words, ones that meet the policy, don't meet. So you'll have some, again, the final approval doesn't happen until you approve the final budget, quite frankly, right?
But the 12 applications
But the
need to be approved
applications-
at some point.
But from exactly.
So when do we think we can fit that in? Because
well,
now we're starting to, all these timelines we reverse engineered that, right? From the time that,
Yes.
so it's got to fit in there
We
somewhere.
have to fit it in, otherwise it ends up getting part of the final budget discussion. And we get into
Oh.
that detail during that budget discussion, like as when we're.
Right, when we're doing the bylaw itself.
Well, it's not the bylaw, it's that, because if you remember, once we get past the open house, which includes any feedback, any emails to our Just Ask, any of the mechanisms, the surveys completed, we provide then at a council meeting all the feedback to council that's been received on the budget, right? For your review, it gets included, and then we have a budget meeting where we sit down.
I'm only looking at this for dates.
Yes,
That's
yes, because we don't have a date scheduled, obviously, for that final budget meeting, because we were still confirming the 31st date for the open house.
but why can't we have a special meeting, much like we are doing now, right after the open house?
You can.
Well,
And that,
that's,
you
right?
can,
That's
yes.
what we're
Yeah.
I'm just
talking.
trying to reverse engineer this back. So May the 15th, we need to be finalized.
May 15th is the deadline for the bylaw to be adopted. Correct, Tony? I'm just looking to make sure. What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need at least one meeting before that for first 3 readings.
Yes.
So we like to have, what we attempt to do is by the end of April is that council gives one last review of that document based on the feedback, the budget binder document. And it typically in the past, it's been fairly, I'll say it, efficient, for lack of better words, because all these discussions have happened prior, so that which they incorporate any potential, because that's when you make that final decision to say this is what we want to have as our final numbers, so then we can draft information for the bylaw essentially to bring forward to council. Which, if you want that same sort of meeting, then to your point, Councillor Gerwing, we would want to have some kind of special meeting potentially to go through this process, so that last review of the binder after the potential edits are made, or what kind of direction council may have made, we can present that for council's review and approval.
Right, so essentially the only thing we're doing different is holding this discussion till after the presentation at the open house.
Yes,
That's essentially what we're doing.
that's essentially the difference. Yep. Because everything else has
And
already
it
occurred.
appears to me there's plenty of time to do that. There's plenty of time to do that if we do the open house on the 31st.
Because you'll have an idea, especially considering it's the first time that we've gone through this process, that specific to this process, you can get feedback around for lack of better words, a flavor for the community in terms of the value overall of what that is. And they might want us to talk specifically, but the value overall in terms of what that amount is that would be levied to support the nonprofits, including any potential late intakes based in the policy that would occur throughout this tax season or budget year.
Right. Okay, and I'm pretty comfortable with the information that I've presented up, or not I've presented, that I've reviewed up till now to be able to explain some of these at the, if not all of them, at the open house myself. Others might not be in that place, but I am. So, yeah. So I guess essentially then it's up to us individually to review the information that's presented so far to see if you need anything else, and or if you have any questions about that information specific to your knowledge and your abilities.
Yes, and just want to make sure that I don't step out of bounds. Are we going directly to the organization that we have in question, or are we going to Scott and hence staff, or how would you like that process to roll out?
So I think you would do that with staff.
Okay, like,
Because so far
Scott
staff
and
has
then-
been dealing with the individual organizations,
Okay.
and I don't know that we want to interject council into that. We go through staff to the organizations and then back to the information that you're looking for. Unless it's an analysis question, and then that, you can do that with Tony. You know,
Okay.
as far as analyzing the information that you've received so that you're comfortable with your decision.
thanks.
Yeah, what I'll ask actually, so if you have some specific stuff, come through me. So that I can, because we might have 3 questions asked of the same thing that I can provide it or ensure that, because otherwise it could be a little rapid fire for Shayna.
Yeah.
And then absolutely, I mean, like, as we've done in the past and fine again is if there's stuff that's specific on an analysis or understanding a financial piece or whatnot, or clarity on, have that conversation, feel free to have a conversation with Tony.
Go ahead, please.
So notwithstanding any questions that individual mayor and council may have, it seems to me that there's 5 applications that I believe from your comments have all the information. One that is eligible, I'm getting more information. And 2, like I said, 2 organizations I'm meeting this week. So if there are specific questions that you have regarding what's before you, as Scott said, it would be helpful to know the individual organization-specific questions. But also if there's any questions regarding the process or things like that, feel free to provide that as well. But I am meeting with these organizations this week, so there will be more information coming.
Okay, so I think we can do that individually through Scott to get there. I mean, this meeting is, I think it probably didn't go the way staff was looking for it to go with respect to some decisions about some of these applications, but I think it was a very good discussion, but putting us all on the page about process. And I hope you all agree with that. And yeah, I think that's probably as far as we need to get today's meeting.
Do we need to have a resolution about this $1,106,803 that
Staff are waving their head up and down.
we move that forward?
So I guess the suggestion would be, because we didn't necessarily get a resolution after our, when we went through the budget process or the draft process. So if we can get, and I'll lean on you, Jay, in terms of the wording here, but what would be good is to get a resolution that would basically give staff the approval to present a budget based on what's already been approved, so presented to council, which would include the value that's in the report here.
Being stated at $1,106,803.
Because the only change to what we're going to present to the public essentially will be the additional funds, because at the time when we presented the budget to council, there was $1 million placeholder under the government transfer piece. So this is more specific, but everything else will be static.
Yeah. So there's no changes to the other parts of the budget at all. This was the last number that we needed to put in there.
I'm going to lean on Tony if there's anything. Yeah. Okay. She's giving me the look that I think you're good. If there was anything.
There were a couple other items, but they've since come through the regular meeting um,
Process?
process, yeah. So those would be part, but you've resolved on those separately as
Yes.
well.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we're looking for a resolution to include this number in the draft and to accept that as the current draft,
To present, yes.
and to present to the public. Okay, have you got that written down that way?
That the amount of $1,106,803 for the government transfers program be included in the 2026 draft budget to take forward for public consultation.
Okay, what about the piece that this is all done? That this is the draft we're taking forward? You've added this number, but we haven't approved the final draft.
Be included in the 2026 draft budget and that
We.
I'm just trying to catch
complete-
that
to-
bit that,
yeah.
that we're done the draft piece of
Okay.
it. So,
to complete the draft, let's say. Do you want me
Yeah.
to reread that?
Tony, have you got something you wanted to add?
If I recall, it has always been general consensus at the end of a budget meeting that the draft be taken forward for public consultation. I don't know that we've ever had a resolution at that point.
Yeah,
We've definitely we've had a resolution in the
Yeah.
past.
Okay.
We've
Yep, then that
we've
works.
typically,
Okay.
we've typically done it after.
we've had this conversation about
Yeah,
the
so when-
specifics, yeah.
We would have already had that resolution passed, but we didn't, knowing that we still had to have this discussion around.
Right.
Because the only outstanding item was the placeholder for the government transfer process, right? Otherwise, in previous years, we've gone through the budget piece, draft piece, and council's passed a resolution to bring that draft budget as discussed.
So then it's
for-
everything you said in that first resolution and that this completes the draft budget to be presented to the public.
And then what we'll do is obviously prior to the open house is once we get this number in, then that information will be provided for council. So you'll have what that new, I always look at what that final tax levy amount is at the end of the day, once everything's in place.
Okay, so we have a resolution on, no, we don't have it on the floor. We have a resolution. Who would like to move that resolution?
Well,
Moved by Councillor Souls. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Enox. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. There was no new business items. Adjournment is in order. Councillor Roper, Councillor Souls, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.